जनषट्पदैरहरः पैपीयमानं मुदा भूयात् भारतपङ्कजं कलिमल प्रध्वंसिनः श्रेयसे मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम् यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वैदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनः यस्यान्तं न विदुः सुरासुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः ॐ श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः।
Thank you. ॐ नारायणः परो व्यक्तात् अण्डमव्ययसम्भवम् अण्डस्यान्तस्त्विमे लोकाः सप्तद्वीपा च मेदिनी ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। Verse 16. नासतो विद्यते भावः नाभावो विद्यते सतः उभयोरपि दृष्टोऽन्तः स्त्वनयोस्तत्त्वदर्शिभिः. We have been looking at the arguments connected to this particular verse, which is both very important and also very cryptic. So the first argument, which was a little bit involved, we have finished looking at, and just to sum that up, what did that entail, and what what that entailed was it led to the very helpful and extremely profound insight of the two kinds of buddhis, sad buddhi and asat buddhi. And don't get confused here, it's not that there are two competing cognitions. In the same cognition there are two components. One component is that mechanism which identifies or recognizes. That's why even in English we have the word recognize, which recognizes the objects that are in front of oneself. This is one component of the cognition. As in, this is pot, this is thought, this is a pot thought, this is cat, this is hat, etc. So, this is one one component in the process of cognizing something. But Adi Shankara very beautifully points out that this component is variable. And anything that is variable here is in this verse is known as asat. Asat doesn't mean non-existent. Asat simply means that which is dependent on something else. That is what asat is. Asat doesn't mean, what is that? Asat does not mean false or illusory. Far from it. Asat simply means it is something that depends on something else, meaning it does not have a leg to stand on. It is not a self-evident, self-standing reality. It can never be, simply because it is variable and changing. And so, this component in one's cognition is always variable and is always available as object-centric, object-centered. So, this component is object-centered, and that which is the revealing, that which reveals. So, that which is revealed is called variable. So, anything that is revealed does not have the same reality as that which reveals. That is going to be talked about very soon. So, we have one component in the cognition called asad buddhi, meaning simply that all the objects of cognition shine in borrowed light. They shine in the light of that witness awareness, namely I. So the I buddhi here is called sad buddhi, which is contingent upon the I being self-evident, self-existent, which is the revealer, in whose presence all the things that are variable come to light. So, the sad buddhi and asad buddhi are not like chocolate cake or croissant. No, not on the same par. You cannot choose. I think today I'll have asad buddhi. Sat, sat, sat all the time, Had enough of that in Chandogya Upanishad. Let's go with asad. This is not an option. It is not an option because they don't occupy the same plane. One is a projection of the other. One is revealed, the other is the revealer. One is dancing and shining in the borrowed light of awareness, which is the I. And the other one is watching the dance without itself participating in the ups and downs and the changes of that particular dance. So, the asad buddhi thrives in the borrowed light, like even the crow that crashed a peacock convention. Annual peacock convention, the board read, very boring. And then what? Then underneath it said, no crows allowed, nothing else allowed, only peacocks. This is only for peacocks. The crow looked and said, oh, they seem to be having such a good time. They are dancing very well. I want to join, what to do? And then it tried to go as itself. and there was a big bouncer peacock at the entrance, and gave it a push. Don't you see? It says here, annual peacock conventions for peacocks only. What are you doing here? Go. And then it very longingly just did a parikrama, a little perambulation of the perimeter. And then what happened? Then it understood that there is another way. Because as the peacocks were dancing, forgetting themselves, they were shedding the nice iridescent feathers. And crows are very intelligent. And so the crow just picked a few of them and adorned itself. And then approached the gate of the convention. And this time the gatekeepers looked at this strange creature trying to enter. But fortunately for the crow, they had just undergone some diversity training. So they were trained not to say anything bad. Like, oh, you look strange. What kind of a peacock are you? They knew better than to say anything that could be remotely understood as discriminatory. So they said, okay. Even as the crow now turned peacock was fishing in its feathers for supposedly a pass. They just gave it a pass without the pass. They said, "Jao, theek hai. Go inside. Have a good time." And then the crow also got to dance. Very happily was dancing. And the other peacocks, if they thought that this was a little strange, they also just ignored the crow. Some of them didn't even look at it. And then as the crow forgot itself, the borrowed plumes came off one by one, dropped. And then sadly, our intelligent crow was found out and pecked out of the convention. You have get crashed, you don't belong. So replace the word annual peacock convention with the word Sat. Satchidananda. And then what? Of course, there will be only one person there who will not be dancing, that one light of consciousness alone. And then who is this crow? Asad Buddhi. And the three plumes it has borrowed is the light of Sat, Chit and Ananda. So everything shines because it is Sat. Sat is not any one thing. So this is what we have to, the first explanation and the objection. This is what it yields. We may forget the objection, but this is not something to forget. This is something which is that this is all a vikara. Sadvikara, chidvikara. The whole thing is as it were a modification of the Sat, so to speak, along with name and form, which becomes the object buddhi, we can say that. The buddhi which cognizes the objects, object buddhi, object-centric, object-centered buddhi is called Sadbuddhi. And then that Sadbuddhi does not, Asad Buddhi. And this Asad Buddhi does not sit in a vacuum, does not come out of itself, is not there by itself. The object buddhi is not operational without the presence of the subject buddhi, which is here called Sad Buddhi, I Buddhi, I thought, I Buddhi. And that I thought is the precursor to the Asad Buddhi, to the object buddhi. In the presence of the subject alone, the object can shine. So the other component here, in fact the only component is the I Buddhi. Really, the subject buddhi shines and then the object buddhi is shining after the subject buddhi. It borrows that light of awareness and shines. It's a revealed buddhi, whereas the sad buddhi is the revealer buddhi. And the two cannot ever get mixed up. Because one is light, the other is the shadow that the light casts. And so they cannot be mixed up. Still somehow they are. Which is why we are spending so much time studying this verse. If they never got mixed up, we can just go. We would have probably gone few more verses. But because it gets mixed up, because the subject object, so that Sankara, not to be confused with Shankara, which is the name of the Lord. Sankara means mix up. So the mix up here is the cause of sorrow and fear. Where, as we saw in verses 14 and 15, the heat, cold, sorrow, etc., exaltation, sorrow, etc., are taken to be the properties of the I or the attributes of the I, whereas the I is free of all of them. So here is a conscious unpacking of the process of cognition itself, so that one can step back and gain a much needed inner space in order to say, okay, this is the object buddhi. The object buddhi is dependent on who? I, subject. And so then the next thing that is pointed out that we have seen is that the object buddhi is changing all the time, depending on what is cognized. And that which is cognized is not always the same thing. Now pot, now hat, now mat, now cat, now rat, now bat. And then this way there is a stream of objects that fall into one's awareness, so to speak. A stream of objects. They don't fall by themselves. The awareness, as it were, goes and lights them up one by one by one by one. And there is a stream of discrete objects that the string of awareness, this Sakshita, strings along. That's how we can compose stories. That's how we can say, oh, this happened once upon a time. And then after that, tadanantaram, after that this happened. And then you know what happened? And then this one said that thing about that one. And then chaos ensued, misunderstandings came, and so on and so forth. This is what is the object buddhi. The subject buddhi is the string, which is invisible. The I is invisible, it's not objectifiable. The I is experienced, yes, but it is invisible. It is not, it is experienced without being an object of experience. It is experienced as the subject, which is self-evident. It's not experienced as something needing to be revealed, like even one's own feelings. And so this I buddhi is the string upon which all objects of experiences called asad buddhi are strung, in order to make a garish mala, a frightening mala of mismatched beads, mismatched materials and experiences. Maybe a modern fashion statement. We don't know. And so therefore, this has to be very, very clear. And then the I buddhi. First we make this separation, the I buddhi, the subject buddhi and the object buddhi. The object buddhi is nothing but the subject buddhi lighting up something without undergoing any change. Even the lighting up, even though it's a verb, it's not an act. Just like when you say the sun shines, shining is not an action, it's an effortless manifestation of the sun. So in the same way, so too here the buddhi that is called sad buddhi, the subject buddhi, the I buddhi, lights up everything effortlessly without becoming dim in the process, without undergoing any change whatsoever. And so these two buddhis become the crux of the of Vedanta Shastra, because there is the there is the there is that problem, the problem of the mix-up, where the object is taken for the subject, like the body, the mind, etc., is taken to be Atma, and the Atma is not recognized for what it is. And so that was the first objection. And then one more thing, the Sad Buddhi is identified with the cause and the Asad Buddhi is the effect. Subject Buddhi is revealed to be the cause, is revealed to be that same awareness which is equated with the cause of the universe. And the Asad Buddhi, or the object-centered Buddhi, is the Karya. And the Karya is Karanat Ananyat. So the Karya, that which is seen as the effect, is non-separate from the cause. This also we got from the very long and wonderful discussion that we have been having. So the Karya is not separate from the Karana. In fact, the Karya is Karana. But can we take it the other way around? Never. Pot is nothing but clay. The top of the pot clay, the bottom of pot clay, sides of pot is clay. Weight of pot is the weight of clay. The color of pot is the color of clay. The smell of the pot, when you smell the pot, you are smelling the clay. In fact, the whole pot is clay. But you cannot reverse it and say, clay is pot. No, clay is clay. Pot is clay. So too here, Sadbuddhi is Sadbuddhi. Asadbuddhi resolves into Sadbuddhi, which is why there is the mix-up. So even though we start off with two, we have to see that unequal relationship between the object-centered Buddhi and the subject-centered Buddhi. The existence of the object-centered Buddhi is completely dependent upon the subject Buddhi. Without the I, there are no objects to be revealed. The I is unchanging, and whatever the I lights up, it shows it as non-separate from the I, non-separate from that Sat. But then what is this Asad? Mithya, a dependent reality. And so this was the first objection. This was the first objection. What was the objection? That that if the first objection, just to summarize, was that if everything is if this is unreal, if Shita, Ushna, etc. is unreal, then maybe, and everything resolves into its cause, you say, so the cause also resolves into another cause, it is observed. Okay, pot resolves into clay, fine. And then clay resolves into earth, atoms, molecules, particles, etc., etc. So therefore what? The whole world is a solipsistic, some kind of an entity which has no reality. And this is why Adi Shankara beautifully brings in the two buddhis, the one which is a mirage of the other, the one which is independent, self-aware, self-evident consciousness, and the other one which is a projection, as it were. And then he also takes the pain to point out that it is not, it is not like saying Sadbuddhi, Asadbuddhi is not like saying blue lotus. No, the is not an attribute of the pot. In fact, the pot is an incidental attribute of the is. Pot, thought, cat, hat, mat, rat, etc. are all incidental attributes of is. So, isness as pot. So, that is that being, that sentient conscious being which simply is, which is self-evident, which is not dependent on its existence for anything else. So this isness, gently rocks in the breeze as a tree and rolls down the hill in the form of a boulder, eats other beings in the form of a crocodile, and complains in the form of a jiva, a human being. That is the same is everywhere. And then the is and the I are so distinct from one another that whatever the is and the object of is are so distinct from one another that the object of is cannot frighten the is, which is the I buddhi, cannot frighten, cannot cause sorrow. This is what why? Because the Sad Buddhi never deviates and Asad Buddhi always keeps changing. This is what we have seen. Then, now we are ready, now that we have caught up, and the catching up itself took half an hour, but I think it was well worth it. So, now we are ready for the second objection, which is very interesting, and it's a very, this is what you can expect of the Purva Pakshi. And the Purva Pakshi says, Ghate vinashte ghata buddhau vyabhicharyantyam sadbuddhihi api vyabhicharati iti chet. Iti chet means, what if? So, when the pot is gone, consciousness is also gone with the pot. Yeah. So the awareness of the awareness is also gone. Pot is gone. You say pot means pot, the akara, the name and form, plus the awareness of the pot, the is of the pot. So pot, the name and form gone. And then what else is gone? No, the awareness is also gone. Pot gone. I buddhi, sad buddhi gone. The Sad Buddhi, after all, you said, was inextricable from the pot. When the pot was being sighted, when the sight of the pot was taking place, then the Sad Buddhi was there. When the pot broke, and then what? Sad Buddhi also, bye-bye. Does that happen? No, that doesn't happen. Why? Because Adi Shankara simply responds, Na patadau api sadbuddhi darshanat visheshena vishaya eva sa sadbuddhihi. He says, no, you're foolish to even suggest that. How foolish can you be? Pot gone, but the buddhi pot gone is not gone. Pot is gone, but the awareness of the going of the pot is still there. So pot gone, is buddhi still there, because the is buddhi recognizes both the arrival of the pot and the departure of the pot. What do you mean the departure of the pot? Does it grow some legs and walk away? No, it just, it was batted to the edge of the table by a cat and then it was slowly dropped down. Why? Because the cat was bored, that's all. You were not playing with it, or you were late in feeding it, that's all. And so it just batted it and then and you said, no, don't do that. And it looked at you, made direct eye contact and batted it a little further, and then it went crash. And then what? You are the observer of broken pot. Broken pot is. And then what? Shards of the pot is. Powdered pot is. Where did the is go? The is just joined whatever that awareness is revealing right now. The is buddhi doesn't go. And here, he says it moves to the cloth, because that's just one more way of looking at it. Cloth buddhi. So the pot is, cloth is, this is, that is. So ghata pata. So just like I say hat, cat, mat, rat, I learnt it from Adi Shankara, because ghata pata mata, this is how it all started. So in case you're wondering what is the connection between pot and cloth, it's just you cannot say there is neither rhyme or reason, but rhyme is very much there. Reason may not be there. Rhyme is there. Because there is some kind of it's kind of nice to look at it this way. So ghata, pot, rhymes with pata, cloth, and so ghata pata. And then this is how Adi Shankara also, this is how we learnt to teach and to talk. This is how it is. So here we see this same thing. No, it may not, the pot consciousness is not lost. The consciousness of existence of anything is not lost. Why? Because that consciousness of the existence, that consciousness, which is that awareness of that existence, expresses itself through other objects which are existent, such as cloth, etc. So the Sadbuddhi Visheshana Vishaya Eva Sa, meaning the subject buddhi relates to only the attributes of various things, that it joins the attributes of various things that are already existent, which are non-separate from itself. So it joins the attribute. Pot is broken, cracked pot is, broken pot is, powdered pot is. Everything is. And then when you say, no, but why do you want to put it this way? Why can't I say is not? Say is not. But are you not constrained to use the word is in is not? That is I, because in your presence alone any relative absence can be cognized, and you are never absent. You are never absent. So the cognition of absence is also contingent upon the existence and the presence of you, which is self-cognized. So there, that was easy. The second objection and quashing it was very, very easy. And then the Purva Pakshi is very puzzled now. So PP usually means Purva Pakshi, but here it is PPP, puzzled Purva Pakshi, because he comes up with a new objection. Well, I'm not convinced. Why? Sadbuddhi vat ghata buddhi api ghatantare drishyate iti chet. All right, so you are saying that the Sadbuddhi, keeps on changing with reference to whatever it sees, whatever it objectifies. So he in fact is puzzled, the Purva Pakshi, because he is contradicting himself from the previous objection. What was the objection number 2? Objection number 2 was that when the pot is lost, the consciousness of its existence is also lost, and this was happily corrected. So now he says, all right, the consciousness you say moves from one pot to something else. No. He says that you say that the only the object is lost, the awareness is the same. Now he contends the object is also not lost. How? The pot was already powdered to smithereens. What do you mean the object is not lost? Well, that was just one pot that became a cracked pot, powdered pot. What about the other pot? I have many pots. So the awareness should stick to the pot according to this Purva Pakshi. So either the pot and the awareness should be lost forever together, or the awareness should continue in the form of the next pot that you see on the shelf, or you see somewhere in your garden, watering pot. So this is a very interesting thing, because this is kind of very puzzling Purva Paksha, because Sadbuddhi Vat. So just like the I Buddhi which you say is never lost, Ghata Buddhi hi api, the object Buddhi centered on the Ghata also doesn't get lost. It ki Ghatantare drishyate iti chet. It is stuck there to the ghata, the I buddhi is stuck to the ghata because of because ghatantara darshanat, because you see another ghata. Is this clear? Is the objection clear? Yeah, so this is something which is very interesting. So, because somehow the Purva Paksha wants to eulogize this mix up between the Sadbuddhi and the Asadbuddhi, and catch hold of the Sadbuddhi and earmark the Sadbuddhi to the object which is Ghata here. So, what if one Ghata is destroyed? Then, another Ghata is there. Yeah, says Adi Shankara, but that Ghata Buddhi is not recognized when you look at Pata. The hat Buddhi is not recognized in the cat. Cat Buddhi is not recognized in the mat. Mat Buddhi is not recognized in the bat. Whether you are talking of bat or whether you are talking of the bat, doesn't matter. So when you look at a hat, you don't see a cat. Because if the Sadbuddhi and the cat Buddhi were one and the same, had glommed on together, had been velcroed together, were indistinguishably linked, inextricably linked, then what should happen? So whenever you see anything, you should see the cat. You should see the cat on top of the hat. Now it is sounding like a Dr. Seuss book, okay? On top of the mat. But that's not how you see it. When you see cat, you only see cat. Cat gone, hat comes, hat gone, mat comes, mat gone, bat comes. So you see, you cannot say that the Sadbuddhi lingers because it is so fond of the pot that it is lingering with the pot. Because no, pot gone, cloth comes, cloth gone, something else comes. The object keeps changing. And the Sadbuddhi is what? Navyabhicharati, doesn't change, but as though goes and touches the object and brings it to light. That much is the sambandha. The sambandha of Satya and Mithya is that in the presence of Satya alone, Mithya is revealed. So the Sadbuddhi or Satyam is not connected to one particular object which is Mithya. Otherwise you will be seeing that particular object each time sight takes place. That is not the case at all. You don't see it each time. You see each time you see something, you don't see pot buddhi. Pot buddhi does not take place at all. Never ever. Na, he says, patadau adarshanat. Why? Because the pot consciousness cannot arise when you are objectifying a piece of cloth. So this is the contention. Pot buddhi cannot carry over. There is no lesha, there is no residue of anything when we talk about Sadbuddhi. The Sadbuddhi shakes itself off. It lights up and moves on, it lights up and moves on. Moves on means what? It doesn't move on, it just joins whatever it lights up briefly in order to produce that perception. And after that what? The perception, the object of perception recedes, goes away, or you move away from that object of perception, and what remains is perception itself, that is perception as without any particular thing to witness. What remains is that content of the perception, which is the Sadbuddhi. The Sadbuddhi alone morphs into, as it were, to the object without undergoing any change. The Sadbuddhi alone morphs into the thinker, the revealer, the I, without undergoing any change. The Sadbuddhi alone, as it were, morphs into the pramana, the means of knowledge by which something is objectified. Here we are only looking at the faculty of sight. We are just looking at sight. And so this is, so the sight, seer, seen. Seer, sight, seen. This is what is the tripod. The tripod is basically of the seer, sight and seen. And the seer is who? Atma. Atma with reference to the one who owns up a particular cognition is called seer. Atma with reference to the ahankara who says, aha, I have seen, I see, is the seer. And what is the seen? The seen is nothing but that Satchidananda Atma which lights up the object of sight without really becoming that object. And then what? How does the subject, how do the subject and the object come together? How do they come together? They come together with the help of sight, in this case. Why? How do they come together with the help of sight? Because the sight is what joins the I, the seer, with the object that is to be seen. So if you sit with closed eyes, the sight is not going to take place. So when you open the eyes, you say, ha, I see. So what is sight? That Sadbuddhi alone, blessing the eyes in the form of a means of knowledge, is sight. Sight, so that sight, seer, seen, not away from Sadbuddhi at any given time. All that is there is Sadbuddhi, really speaking. The Asadbuddhi here is just for the sake of this very important differentiation, without which there is a lot of problems one can have. So because of this differentiation, because of the mix-up, the differentiation is needed. And here we can even make a threefold differentiation. That same I is morphing or appearing as the seer. The same I is non-separate from the karya, that which is seen, and the same I is the one that is the blessed sight, the sight that is equipped with that awareness in order to, which is equipped with the ability to identify the object. So the pramana, sight, prameya, the object of sight, pot, thought, etc. And then seer, pramata. These distinctions are mithya. Oh, so which is real among all these three? Pramata must be real. No. Pramata is only in relation to prameya. So, okay, prameya must be real because pramata keeps changing. Prameya is always there. No, prameya is in fact keeps on changing. All right, let's just have a compromise. Pramana must be real. No. None of them, all of them are mithya. They are just projections of that awareness which, as it were, morphs into seer, sight, seen in a way that is even unimaginable, and we can't even talk about it because it's happening simultaneously. There is no time gap between, okay, now I am the seer. All right, okay, now I don't see because I have become the object of sight. No such thing takes place. So one cannot imagine this. This is what is called ananta, ananda. That Satchit, very easily people understand. But that Ananda or Ananta, that Anantyam of this Atma as Brahman sits very vaguely in the mind. Because one thinks of happiness, and small happinesses is only what comes to mind. That is why there appears to be a obfuscated understanding, of a inhibited understanding. This is what is meant by Ananda. Ananda means limitless. And how is it limitless? Why is it limitless? Because it is not predicated by being one thing, and it doesn't have object wise limitation. Just because that awareness is now in the form of pramata, it cannot be in the form of prameya. No, it is limitless. That same I is without limits, object wise limitation. So therefore it can be three things at once. It can be three entities at once, because it is not any one entity in particular. Now pramana, now prameya, now pramata. Now means what? At the same time, simultaneously. So there is no object wise limitation. And then what? There is no space wise limitation. So you sit here and think, oh, I wonder what the Omicron cases, how much they have fallen in South Africa. You've already gone to South Africa without leaving your seat. You have already traveled there. Or you already think, let's say you think and plan your next vacation. I'm going here to the beach. And then what? You have already gone there. So no space-wise limitation. The awareness has reached the beach, even though you are sitting here in flat land. Okay, the awareness has already reached the beach. Gone. Without that, that's why there is no space-wise limitation. And then there is no time-wise limitation. Now, today pramata, and then tomorrow that sadbuddhi will as though morph into prameya, because it's very old. It takes time because it's been there for a long time. This sadbuddhi is very old. It was there, idam agre asit. Even before this jagat came into being, the jagat was there as sat, unmanifest. So it's very, very, very old. And then so it takes time to transform from the knower to the known. No such thing. No time-wise limitation. Now pramata, and then tomorrow prameya, and then day after tomorrow pramana. No such thing. It's all simultaneous, because time is not an event in which the perception unfolds, even though we think of it like that. Perception, the awareness that is behind the perception is not subject to time. Even though we see things in time, this is the irony. Time is mithya, space is mithya, and any kind of upadhi, object-wise limitation, mithya, 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 mithya. That one sat. And what is this mithya? Mithya is sat. Sat is not mithya. That's why the one who is called pramata, the ahankara that's happy, I conquered it, I got it, I understood it, I saw it, that one is also sat, dependent on sat. And then that which is an object of cognition, ultimately sat. It's all sadbuddhi all the way. And then what? Ultimately sat. Then the sight, hearing, etc., because of which the object comes to light, which joins as it were the subject, which brings the subject and the object together, that is also mithya, subject to the presence of the sadbuddhi alone. So that wherever there is mithya, there is sat. Yatra yatra mithya, tatra tatra satyam. Oh, goody. Let's now say the other way around. Please don't. You cannot say yatra yatra sat. Wherever there is sat, there is mithya, you cannot say. Wherever there is a dependent reality, wherever there is something objectified, sat is not far behind. Mithya is sat. And that's why we say Ishvara is the whole universe, because that is coming one step closer to looking at the mithyatvam of everything. So the Sat Buddhi is the Sat of the Atma, the is, which is the I, which is always there. Even in sleep it is there. In dream it is there. Everywhere it is there. So then that brings us to the last objection. What is that objection? the the Purva Pakshi is further puzzled. And let me just, summarize the objection, because it's not very clear when we read it. So the objection is this, that you say Sad Buddhi joins the pot. You just said that. You said Sad Buddhi joins the thought and brings it to light. You say Sad Buddhi joins the object. How is this combination possible? You yourself said Mithya is Sat is not Mithya. So the combination and the joining can happen only between two equally existent objects. Correct? So the pot can join with another pot. And then, Siamese pot. Okay, so you can join another pot. But then how can there be a combination between Sat and Asat? Cannot be a combination. So, you let us say you stand in front of the mirror, and let us say one more precondition, you are very hungry. And then what? And then you are looking at the face that is reflected in the mirror. Do you take your dinner and feed it to the reflection? No, you cannot, because there are two orders of reality. The face in the reflection is one order of reality, and then what? The spoon holding the food is another order of reality. It cannot, there cannot be any interaction. Let's say you open your mouth, and even the reflected face has an open mouth. You cannot feed it like that. Two different order of reality. Similarly, he says, the Purva Pakshi, that is, that if the Atma is the object of Sadbuddhi, if this Atma is the object of Sadbuddhi, because if the Atma is nothing but this Sadbuddhi, how can, not object, content of this Sadbuddhi, how can it join anything? You keep saying awareness is joining the pot, is joining the hat, cat, rat, etc. How can it join? So the Sadbuddhi should be sitting in meditation all the time. It is even that it cannot do, because it is actionless. It is, and we'll see in the Mundakopanishad, Adreksham, Agrahyam, Avarnam, Agotram, Apanipadam. This is the Sat which is described. It cannot see, it is not an object of, neither can it see, nor is it an object of sight. Neither can it hear, nor is it an object of hearing. Ashrotram. And then it doesn't have hands and legs, so it is incapable of action. Agotram, it doesn't have some kind of a lineage. Oh, I come from Bharadwaj lineage. It doesn't say, this Gotra I have. No. And it doesn't have a clan, it doesn't have a lineage, it doesn't have relationships with anybody, it doesn't have mother, it doesn't have father. What to talk of ancestors? It doesn't have anything. And so, if this is Sat, how can it join anything else? So, it cannot join. Objection. Adi Shankara is very cool about this. He says, well, there is no problem. Naisha dosha. Why? Because the Sat can join anything. Anything Sat can join, because that joining itself, my dear friends, Adi Shankara points out, is mithya. Joining is not real. Because everything is an as though superimposition on Sat. So the Sat is not opposed to anything, including your own ignorance. That's why, generations after generations after generations after generations after generations. Why are you repeating it so many times? Because this is a fact. Generations after generations of people born and die away without knowing the truth of the I. What better proof you need that the Sat is not opposed to ignorance? Without knowing, without even wondering. Am I missing something? They don't even wonder. Is something wrong? Is there an incompleteness? Is there something I should be looking at? They are not wondering at all. And they continue, they persevere, they are there, one after the other, generations of people. And in fact, in those generations of people, they will warn their descendants, all this moksha business, don't go too far. Don't go too far, because something will happen. Everything in balance. Little bit of samsara. Okay, a lot of samsara and a little bit of moksha. Nice. Keep it balanced. And so even the nascent ankura, the sprouts of self-enquiry, are quashed by the heels of tradition, customs, etc., under the weight of wrong beliefs passing off as traditions and customs. Even the smallest, the most vulnerable sprout of self-enquiry is just squashed. And so therefore what? Generations after generations of people are born, and generations after generations of people die away without knowing the Atma. Sat is not offended, Atma is not offended. Atma doesn't say, I'm always misunderstood. I am tired of being equated with a body. I am tired. How many times I have told them I have nothing to do with the body, nothing to do with the mind. Why don't these people listen? I am so misunderstood. I am the most misunderstood entity in this whole world. It doesn't have a complex. It allows the ignorance to flourish. And until you say, I am sick of not knowing, the ignorance will continue. Same thing. Like you're walking in more of a local example. One is walking in the desert, and instead of the oasis, which is there in the heart, which one wants to see, and one has been told, okay, a few kilometers, there is the oasis. Of course, it's the desert sun. You want the oasis to come just now. So what happens? In the glint of the sun, on the sand, you superimpose mirage water. So the mirage water in the desert, it's a mirage, but still it makes you happy, and there is a little more of a pep in the step to go and find the oasis. And so the mirage water is wonderful. And then what? Whether the water is not there, it is still Sat. It is Sat that is upholding the mirage water. Sat Buddhi joins your imagination, which is Asat. Is there mirage water? No. Mirage water is Asat. It is, it is Atyanta Asat, because it's not even Mithya. It is Mithya within Mithya. It is in your own imagination. But Sat Buddhi joins that, and then the is Buddhi joins anything and everything. That is what the Jagat is made of. The is Buddhi joining everything, because Sat is not opposed to anything. Because everything being an as though superimposition upon the Sat, it lends itself to any type of an object, whether that object has an empirical reality or whether that object is an imagined entity. So the Sat Buddhi joins an empirical pot or an imagined pot. Sat Buddhi joins and reveals a snake hissing in the backyard. And then what? Or it could be a snake that is superimposed on a piece of rope. Same Sat Buddhi reveals both the imagined snake and the empirical rope. And the aropa, it reveals. And then what? The Sat Buddhi joins even the mistake that you make, thinking, I am as good as the body, I am as good as this, I am as good as my job, I am as good as my bank account, I am as good, which doesn't count at all, and I am as good as how other people see me, I am as good as how much other people validate me. This, it joins each and every situation. So the content of this Sadbuddhi Vishaya is I, Atma. And that is what is this Sat. And then for which there is no abhava, no absence is there. This is what is meant, that the Sadbuddhi is never absent. Even in your imagination, the Sadbuddhi is there. Sadbuddhi is there. And so therefore what? There is only Sat, nothing else is there. And so this is something which is very, very important to understand, because otherwise the last objection can become very confusing. And so anything that depends on anything else here is called asat. So that mithya also depends on sat, and the Sat Buddhi, as it were, reveals the mithyatvam, reveals that object, reveals also the reality of the object, reveals also the mistake, reveals also the imagination. The whole thing is just is, that is I, Atma. Everything else is Namarupa. The Atma has to join the Namarupa, without which there is no Jagat. So the joining is as though there is no joining, really speaking. And neither does the Atma get altered to something else in order to do this joining. No. So therefore, the final objection reads, Sadbuddhi api nashte ghate nadrishyate iti chet. This is the final objection. What is that? When the pot is gone from one's awareness, the awareness is also gone. This kind of sounds like objection number 2, but it is not. And why it is not, we will see next time. It is slightly different. And that's why I had to summarize this objection with a little bit of background, so we don't confuse it for objection number 2. So the final objection we'll see next time, and the samadhanam, and then we can happily go on to verse number 17. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.